Hello ladies and gents, Mr Walsh here, just helping out Mr Lowe as a favour on the old YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe and like this video. What we're going to do is talk you through the favourite part of Elizabethan for me, that is the Armada. We'll do a little bit of cause, events and consequence today, give you a bit of an overview, see if we can help you when it comes time for your GCSEs. Not very far away now. So let's get straight into stuck in the meat of it. What caused the Armada? A couple of things really. First one we're going to look at is this. Back in 1568, Elizabeth again refused the proposal of Philip II. She did it as soon as she got in 1558, 1559, and then again in 1566. So what happens is, Philip's sick and tired of asking. This is a spit in his face. He was married to the previous Queen of England, Mary I, Elizabeth's sister, and now she's pining him off. Not going well for her. So that is one kick in the teeth to good old Phil. Secondly, we've got Elizabeth supporting privateers. Not just those sea beggars, good old from the Netherlands, who are rebelling against him, but also privateers like Francis Drake, who are robbing Spanish ships, especially gold. The thing is, she's taken a bit off the top. That really grinds the gears of good old Philip II of Spain. We're going to get a little theme here, ladies and gents. We're grinding it. Back to 1587. One thing that Mary Queen of Scots had, that she had in common with Elizabeth, and she has in common with Philip II. They all believe in this idea of divine right. That God has put them on the planet to be the ruler of these countries. When Elizabeth manages to finally agree, bow to the Privy Council's pressure to execute Mary Queen of Scots in 1587, not only does that upset herself, but also really ticks off Philip. Philip, who's a firm believer in divine right and a firm believer in Catholicism, now has to deal with the fact that Elizabeth has authorised the execution of a Catholic queen by birthright. That is one of the final stages that tips over us to war. We've also got the support of the rebels in the Netherlands. That leads us to, in 1585, we had the Treaty of Nonsuch, which effectively puts England and Spain at war with each other. Elizabeth even sends her favourite, Robert Dudley, the Earl of Leicester, with 10,000 men over to support the William of Orange, who is the leader of the rebellion forces in the Netherlands. That, yet again, is armed forces on the ground. It's a bit like what happens if we were to send in troops to Ukraine right now. It would lead to a gigantic war, and that's exactly what happens. The last little thing is this. Throughout our time period, we've studied lots of different plots. We've talked about the Northern Rebellion, we've talked about the Ridolfi plot, Throckmorton plot, and the Babington plot. In 3 out of 4 of those, there has been a threat of Spanish invasion and Spanish help from soldiers. Therefore, all the time there's been building up. What we call this is tension build. And throughout all of these different factors, we are starting to see lots of different causes of the Spanish Armada come to fruition. Moving on to the events now, I'm going to talk you briefly through these. I did have a fantastic little thing. One last little thing to add on to this one though, you don't necessarily need to know this, but the monopoly on trade in the New World, with Spain were demanding that English traders would get licenses that they would never actually give, led to more of our privateering, our pirate actions, once again feeding that cycle of upsetting Philip, damaging that relationship, creating tension. Going on to this, I would have a fantastic little bit of a map here that used to go through it. It's disabled now, but what I'll do is I'll try and talk you through. What we have is 131 ships are leaving Spain in July of 1588. They actually leave from the southern coast all the way down here, if you can see, if you can zoom in, sir. And they start their migration all the way up to the coast of England. It is not until they get to this point right here that we begin to see that English people start reacting. 1588 is the cause of the war. That is when it starts, and this is where we're going now. What they do is we travel all along the south coast. The English scrabble their fleet. Their fleet is 1/3 of the size, slightly better ships, but they are supported by fantastic admirals. And we start to see a slow movement and fighting that takes place throughout the southern coast of England. The Spanish are very good at keeping what we call a crescent formation, a bit like a half moon. It's a very good defensive formation. It means that the English are unable, even with superior ships, to sink any of the 131 warships. They are on a travel all the way over here to the Netherlands. They are supposed to meet the Duke of Alba with at least 30,000 men ready for an invasion. If they get to English shores, ladies and gents, it is kaput for Elizabeth. So, what to do? We've got 2 fantastic seamen. We've got Howard Effingham, a distant relation to our good Queen Elizabeth, and we have Francis Drake, El Drac, the man who would really singe the King's beard down here at Cadiz in 1586. That's the man. We don't like him, but we love him. His name is Sir Francis Drake. He and his good old chap Effingham managed to use superior tactics, and when we get here to the battle at what we call Gravelines, it's important that you know that. just off the coast of the Netherlands here, there is a massive sea battle. And what happens is Francis Drake encourages Effingham to give up 8 of his ships. He sets them on fire. Ladies and gents, think about this now. If you're on a boat that's made of wood in the middle of the ocean, if your ship burns down, you are going to die. Are you going to want a fire ship heading right towards you? I wouldn't. How about you? So, what it causes is all of the Spanish ships, all 131 who were still breathing, actually 130, one of them had done themselves in. They put too much on their boat. But 130 ships cut their anchors. That way there's no way for them to stop in the middle of the ocean or to harbour in a port. And they get swept up by the currents all the way to the north of Scotland here. When they get to Scotland, a divine intervention or a change in weather patterns, what do we call it? All the way around the north of Scotland, they hit heavy storms. And by the time they get to the north of Ireland here, they run into the Faroe Rocks. About half the ships get sunk or destroyed in this area here. That is due to a combination of 2 things really. One, the poor weather leading into the Northern Ireland here. And secondly, to the fact that they did not prepare well enough. They trusted in the preparations they had, which was improper supplies of fresh water and not enough food. The food becomes rotten, the water becomes mixed in with salt water and is unable to be drunk, and we start to see mass starvation. What we have is 30 ships or so lost around the coast of Ireland, and what they thought, Ireland, a Catholic country, going to help us? No, they beat them to death. The rest, we limp back slowly all the way to the coast of Spain here by the end of 1588. With less than 60 ships available. It is a catastrophic failure. What was supposed to be Spain's finest hour and England's demise ends up becoming England's finest hour. That leads us into some of our consequences here, ladies and gents. First consequence we need to look at. This is the last ever serious threat to British independence, especially to the Protestant independence of Britain. We also have the fact that this embarrassed Spain. We talked about singeing the king's beard. How about setting it on fire and laughing in his face? That's exactly what the Armada did. Not only that, but Elizabeth was able to set the stage for what later became the Golden Age. And that goes beyond our time period here, but it's good to mention, especially for those grades 7 to 9 students, talking about the fact that this sets us up for a Golden Age, and actually, many historians say, is the birth of the British Empire. We also have the fact that this is a demonstration of Elizabeth's control and power. One final thing that I haven't put on the board here to mention is that Elizabeth is very good at using propaganda, like we have somebody else called Hitler and Goebbels. She uses propaganda and she has portraits created, a famous one called the Armada portrait, which in the background shows us having had the Armada on one side and then a storm sent by God, herself in the middle, on the other side a completely destroyed fleet. She uses this, spins it, and forevermore England is Protestant, she is in power, and until 1603 when she eventually dies and hands the throne over to her great nephew James, she is completely in control. Hope that's helpful for you, ladies and gents. Any questions, please fire me an email. Thank you.